My husband thought he had outsmarted me by transferring our property to his mother and sister before our divorce. But he had no idea that I had been preparing my own strategy for 3 months, and he was in for a finale he never expected. My name is Christina, and I want to tell you the story of how my husband tried to leave me with nothing but ended up with nothing himself. This is a story of betrayal, calculation, and justice. A story about how life sometimes delivers the lessons we deserve. But let me start from the beginning. It didn't begin on that ordinary Tuesday morning when Brad announced the divorce. No, it started much earlier, 3 months before that day. I've always been an observant woman. 12 years as a senior financial analyst at Goldman Sachs taught me to notice details others overlook, to analyze behavior, spot patterns, and see red flags where others see mere coincidences. 3 months ago, I started noticing oddities in Brad's behavior. It began with phone calls. He started speaking more quietly, often stepping into another room when his phone rang. When I asked who was calling, his answers were curt. Work. Mom. Susan. But there was something insincere in his eyes. Then I noticed he was staying late at work. Not just staying late. He came home in a different mood. Not exhausted, as he usually was after a long day at the construction site, but energized, as if something was giving him a new sense of purpose. I remember that evening in late September when my suspicions started forming a clear picture. Brad came home around 10 o'clock. His shirt was fresh, and he didn't smell of sweat and concrete dust, as usual, but of an unfamiliar woman's perfume. Long day at work? I asked, not looking up from my laptop.
Yeah, issues with material deliveries. Had to sort it out,
he replied, but his voice sounded unnatural. I looked up and saw him avoiding my gaze. Instead, he headed straight for the shower, mumbling something about being tired. At that point, I didn't know he was seeing Ashley Connor from the house across the street, a young divorcee with 2 kids who had moved to our neighborhood 6 months earlier. Ashley, who was only 28, compared to my 39. But I felt something was wrong. And when you feel that in an 11-year marriage, you have to be ready for anything. That's why I started preparing. First, I made copies of all important documents: our marriage certificate, property deeds, insurance policies, bank statements, and tax returns from recent years. Everything I might need in case of a divorce. Then I began closely examining our finances. I checked all accounts, loans, and investments. I had always been the more financially savvy one in our family, so I knew every number. But I decided to double-check everything. That's when I found the first red flag. Brad had withdrawn $15,000 from our joint account. When I asked him about it, he said he'd bought new tools for work. But I knew his company provided workers with everything they needed. I didn't make a scene. Instead, I started meticulously tracking all our expenses. Over the next 2 months, I discovered that Brad had spent another $8,000 on things I knew nothing about. Dinners at restaurants we hadn't visited together, purchases at jewelry stores. He hadn't given me jewelry in years. Hotel expenses on weekends when he was supposedly visiting his mother in Albany. I realized he was having an affair. And he was spending our joint money on his mistress. That's when I decided to act preemptively. I opened a separate account at another bank and started transferring a portion of my salary there. Not much, just enough that Brad wouldn't notice, but enough to give me a financial safety net if needed. I also started gathering information about his job. I knew Brad was getting kickbacks from suppliers, He'd let it slip a couple of years ago when he was drunk. Back then, I didn't think much of it. Now, I decided to find out the extent of his unofficial income. I befriended Linda Martinez, the wife of one of his colleagues. We'd met at a company barbecue the previous summer, and she was a chatty woman. Linda loved to gossip, and from our conversations, I learned a lot. It turned out Brad wasn't just getting kickbacks. He was also taking bribes to approve substandard materials. According to Linda, everyone at the construction site knew about it but stayed quiet because they all got a cut. I realized I had serious leverage, but the biggest discovery was yet to come. In early December, when Brad stayed late at work again, I decided to drive by the construction site out of curiosity to see if he was really working late. His pickup wasn't there. I drove on, and then it hit me to check Ashley's house. I suspected she was the one he was seeing, but I wanted proof. And there it was, his truck parked in her driveway. My heart pounded. I parked across the street and watched. An hour later, Brad came out, kissed Ashley at the door, and got into his truck. Now I knew the truth. But instead of confronting him, I decided to act strategically. I realized Brad was preparing for a divorce and would likely try to leave me with nothing. That's when I started preparing for war. I hired a private investigator, Robert Houston, recommended by a colleague at the bank. Robert was a retired police detective who knew his craft. I need proof of my husband's infidelity, I told him at our first meeting.
No problem,
Robert replied.
But are you sure you're ready to see the truth?
More than ready. Robert worked for 2 weeks, and what he found exceeded my expectations. Brad had been seeing Ashley for 4 months. He was renting a separate apartment for her downtown, where they spent time when her kids were with their grandmother. He was buying her expensive gifts, taking her to upscale restaurants, and had even given her a car, a used BMW, but still. But the most interesting part was something else. Robert discovered that Brad had been consulting a divorce lawyer for 3 months, a cheap one who specialized in quick divorces and dividing assets to the wife's disadvantage.
Your husband is preparing for a divorce, Robert told me, and it looks like he wants to leave you with nothing.
That's when I knew the game was on, and I had to be ready for any move he made. I started consulting a lawyer, not the cheap one Brad chose, but Deborah Williams, one of the best family law attorneys in the state. Deborah immediately told me to prepare for the possibility that Brad might try to hide or transfer assets. A lot of men think they can cheat the system, she said, but the law is on the side of the honest spouse. I told her about the power of attorney I'd signed 4 years ago. Deborah studied the document carefully. This could be an issue, she said. But if he uses it to deprive you of property, that's fraud. We developed a strategy. I was to act normal, not letting on that I knew anything, while Deborah prepared the necessary documents for a lawsuit. But Brad beat me to it. That Tuesday morning, he walked into the kitchen with a triumphant look. I knew instantly he was about to strike.
Christina, the house now belongs to my mom, and your Honda CR-V is Susan's,
he said, leaning against the kitchen island with a smug smile.
Oh, and by the way, I'm filing for divorce tomorrow.
When I heard those words, my heart sank, then seemed to stop. Despite being prepared for this moment, the blow was painful. He stood in the doorway like an actor on stage, confident he controlled the entire performance. A smug smile spread across his face, and I suddenly realized He was enjoying this moment. He'd rehearsed it while I was slaving away at the bank, working 12-hour days. While you were buried in your financial reports, I took care of the future. He continued, barely hiding his pride. My future. And Ashley's. There it was. He'd named his mistress. I slowly set my cup on the table, not letting my voice betray the tremor inside. A storm of emotions raged within: anger, despair, disbelief. But outwardly, I remained calm, as I did during the most intense negotiations at the bank. The house is now in Mom's name. The car belongs to Susan, Brad went on, clearly savoring the moment. And you, darling, can start packing and look for a studio somewhere in Queens. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. 11 years of marriage, and this is what it's come to. 11 years, I repeated softly. 11 years, Brad. Do you remember how we bought this house? How I worked overtime to save for the down payment? I remember, he shrugged. But that's in the past. Things are different now. I looked at him and didn't recognize him. Had he always been like this, and I just didn't want to see it? How did you do it, Brad? I asked, surprised by my own calm. Easy, he smirked. I have that power of attorney you signed 4 years ago before your London trip. Remember? You were in such a hurry you didn't even read what you were signing. I remembered. I'd needed to fly out urgently for negotiations with British partners and gave him the power of attorney, thinking we were a family, thinking he was my closest ally. I'm tired of you, Christina. His voice hardened. Your rules, your control, your thinking you're smarter than everyone else. You turned our marriage into a business deal. Everything's on a schedule. Everything's by the book. I want freedom. And now I'm going to live with Ashley from across the street. She's younger, prettier, and doesn't act superior like you do. Each word was like a knife to the heart, but I didn't show it. Ashley Connor, I said. 28, 2 kids, works at a salon, right? Brad looked at me, surprised. How do you know? I know a lot, Brad. Like the fact that you've been seeing her for 4 months, that you're renting her an apartment downtown, that you bought her a BMW for 20 grand, and that you've spent over $50,000 of our joint money on her. Brad's face paled. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting my interests, just like you. So what? It doesn't change anything. The house and car are already transferred. The documents are in order. The power of attorney is valid. And what am I supposed to do now? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Nothing. It's all done. There's nothing to divide. No kids, no alimony. You can find a place in a low-rent neighborhood and take your stuff. Ashley's already planning how to redecorate our bedroom to her taste. He paused, savoring the moment. You know, Christina, I thought about this for a long time. We're just different people. You're too ambitious, too independent. I need a woman who appreciates what I do for her, not one who earns more than me and constantly rubs it in. I never rubbed it in, I said. Not with words, but I saw it in your eyes. You always thought you were better than me, smarter, more successful. Let's see how you do without me. He headed for the door but turned back. Oh, and don't try making a scene. It's all legal. The power of attorney is valid. The documents are in order. You're a smart woman, Christina. You'll see fighting is pointless. Of course, I said calmly. I understand everything. He smiled, pleased with my compliance. Good. I hoped you'd be reasonable. Ashley was worried you'd cause trouble, but I told her you're not the type to lose your head. You're right. I nodded. I'm not the type to lose my head. I'm the type who plans ahead. He didn't catch the hint. He just nodded and headed for the door. I'll pick up the rest of my stuff tomorrow. For now, I'll be at Ashley's. Sure. Good luck to you both. He left, slamming the door, leaving me alone in a house that, as it turned out, no longer belonged to me. But he didn't know I was prepared too, and my game was just beginning. For the first half hour, I just sat, staring into space. I think I forgot to breathe. One thought kept spinning in my head. How could he? How could the man I loved for 11 years, who I went through so much with, betray me so cruelly? I remembered our early years, how we dreamed of a house, kids, a shared future, how I supported him when he changed jobs, how we mourned his father's death together, how I cared for him when he broke his leg. Did all of that mean nothing to him? But then my professional instincts kicked in. 12 years at Goldman Sachs hadn't been for nothing. I was used to analyzing, assessing risks, and finding weaknesses in any scheme. And I realized Brad had weaknesses. A lot of them. He thought I'd just give up and walk away defeated. But he forgot who I was. Forgot that I'm a woman who plans several moves ahead. Forgot that I have connections, experience, and a steely resolve. I picked up the phone and called Deborah Williams. Deborah, it's Christina. He did it. He transferred the house and car. When? This morning. He told me about it. I think he prepared the documents earlier. Great. Now we have grounds for a fraud lawsuit. Can you come to my office in an hour? Of course. While getting ready, I called my assistant at the bank. Jessica, I need you to pull my husband Brad Taylor's credit history from all databases. Date of birth, May 15th, 1984. Send everything to my personal email. It's urgent. Christina, why do you? Just do it. No questions. Also, check if he has accounts at other banks. Everything you find. Okay. I'll have it within an hour. Then I called a contact at a credit bureau. Mike, it's Christina from Goldman Sachs. Remember we worked together on that refinancing project? Of course. What's up? I need information on someone's credit history. It's my husband. We're getting divorced. Got it. Send me the details and I'll see what I can find. The next call was the most important. I called my friend Sarah, who works at the IRS. Sarah, I need help. I'm in serious trouble. What's going on, Christina? I briefly explained the situation. Give me his SSN and employer details. I'll check what we have on him. Sarah, this is really important. I suspect he's hiding income. If that's true, we'll find it. Don't worry. At Deborah's office, I finally felt in control again. Calm, confident, with a clear mind. Exactly how I needed to be. So, he used the power of attorney, Deborah said, reviewing the documents. That's good. Good. For our case. Using a power of attorney to deprive a spouse of property right before a divorce is fraud, especially if it's done secretly. What about the house and car? We'll file a lawsuit to have the transactions declared invalid. Anything acquired during the marriage is considered joint property, no matter whose name it's in. Deborah opened a folder of documents. Tell me about the property in detail. From the beginning. The house in Westchester, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, half-acre lot. Bought 6 years ago for $450,000. The $150,000 down payment came from my bonus savings. The mortgage was paid from our joint account, but my income was always significantly higher. I handed her a folder with documents, copies of tax returns for the past 7 years, bank statements, mortgage records, and income statements. My average income over the last 5 years is $180,000 a year. Brad's is $65,000 officially, but I suspect he has unreported income. Deborah studied the documents carefully. The income disparity is significant. That works in our favor. The Honda CR-V was bought 2 years ago for $35,000. I put down $20,000 in cash, and we paid off the loan in a year. Any other property? A cottage in the Hamptons, small but in a good area. I bought it before the marriage with my own money, but we renovated it during the marriage with joint funds. That stays yours. Premarital property isn't subject to division. And the joint bank account. It had about $50,000. Had? I transferred it all to my personal account today. I have signing authority. Good move. Now tell me about his income. I told Deborah everything I knew about Brad's job. How he was getting kickbacks from suppliers and taking bribes to approve substandard materials. Do you have proof? I have witnesses, and the private investigator I hired documented several instances of cash exchanges. Excellent. Hiding income is a serious tax violation. We talked for another hour and a half. Deborah outlined the strategy. First, a police report for fraud, then a lawsuit to have the transactions declared invalid and to divide the property. Christina, I have good news, she said at the end of the meeting. We have a very strong case. Your husband made several serious mistakes. Like what? First, he used the power of attorney to deprive you of property right before the divorce. That's fraud. Second, he didn't account for the fact that you contributed the majority of the funds for the property. Third, if we prove he hid income, the court could award you more than half the assets. For the first time in hours, I felt relief. What's next? Tomorrow morning, we go to the police, file a fraud report. Simultaneously, we file in court to have the transactions declared invalid. And the IRS? Leave that to me. I have contacts there. If your husband is hiding income, they'll find it. When I got home, Brad was gone. Just a note on the fridge. Don't wait up. I'm at Ashley's. I'll get my stuff tomorrow. I sat at my laptop and opened my email. Jessica had sent me a full report on Brad's credit history. What I saw exceeded my expectations. Brad had 3 credit cards I didn't know about, with a combined debt of $38,000, plus a consumer loan from a bank we didn't use, $25,000. But the most interesting part was something else. Mike from the credit bureau found that Brad had applied for loans at several banks, listing his income as $120,000 a year, almost double what he reported to the IRS. I had evidence he was hiding income. I printed out all the documents and laid them out on the table. The picture was becoming clearer. Brad wasn't just cheating on me and stealing our property, he was also hiding income from the IRS. I poured a glass of wine. I needed to calm down and think. Outside, it was already dark, and I saw lights on in Ashley's house. They were probably celebrating their victory. My phone rang. It was Sarah from the IRS. Christina, I checked your husband. You're not going to like what I found. Tell me. He has unreported income he's not declaring. Based on indirect evidence, about $40,000 or $50,000 a year. Plus, he inflated his income on loan applications. Is that provable? More than provable. We can launch an audit. If it's confirmed, it's serious violations. Sarah, I'd be so grateful. No problem. I went through a divorce with a cheating husband myself. I get what you're going through. The next morning, I was up at 5. Shower, coffee, business suit, a gray Armani I wore for the most important negotiations. I needed to look like the professional, confident woman I was. By 8, I was at Deborah's office. We went to the police. Detective Jones listened to my story attentively. He was a middle-aged man with tired eyes and graying temples, the kind who'd seen it all. So, your husband transferred property right before the divorce using a power of attorney, he summarized. Exactly. And he spent over $50,000 of our joint money on his mistress. Do you have proof? I handed him a folder with the private investigator's report. Photos, documents, bank statements, everything was there. Good. We'll open a case. From the police, we went to court. Deborah filed a lawsuit to have the transactions declared invalid and to divide the property. Now we wait, she said. But I'm confident we'll win. At 1 p.m, I returned home. Brad's pickup was parked outside. My heart raced. I wasn't ready to face him so soon. I walked in and saw him in the living room, packing his things into a suitcase. Ashley was with him. She was exactly as I'd imagined, a young, pretty blonde with bright lipstick and a manicure. She wore tight jeans and a pink top with a deep neckline, the classic other woman, only in the role of homewrecker. Oh, Christina, Brad said when he saw me. Meet Ashley. Ashley, this is my ex-wife. Ashley looked up and gave me a condescending smile. Hi, Brad's told me so much about you. I'm sure it was all flattering, I replied coldly. Well, sort of, she giggled. He said you're very career-driven. Always working, never home. Yes, I work. I earn money. Which, by the way, your new boyfriend used to buy you gifts. Ashley blushed. I didn't know that. Of course you didn't. I cut her off. But now you do. All your jewelry, dinners, that new car. It was all paid for out of my pocket. Christina, enough. Brad interrupted. Don't blame Ashley. It's my choice. Your choice. I looked at him in disbelief. Stealing from your own wife is your choice? Don't dramatize. I just took what I deserved after 11 years of marriage. Deserved? I couldn't believe his audacity. Brad, do you remember who put up most of the money for the house? Who paid the mortgage? We were a family. I contributed too. Yeah, 20% of our total income. Quite the contribution. Ashley shifted uncomfortably, clearly uneasy. Apparently, Brad hadn't shared all the details with her. You know what, Ashley? I said, turning to her. I want to thank you. For what? She asked, surprised. For showing me my husband's true colors. I lived with a man I didn't know for 11 years. Christina, what are you talking about? Brad tensed. I'm talking about your unreported income you're hiding from the IRS, your bribes from suppliers, your credit card debts I didn't know about. Brad's face paled. How do you know about that? Did you think I'd just sit and cry? That I wouldn't dig into our finances? What debts? What bribes? Ashley said, alarmed. Brad, what's she talking about? Don't listen to her, Brad said quickly. She's making it up. Making it up? I pulled out the printouts from my bag. Credit card debt, $38,000. Consumer loan, $25,000. All made up? Ashley took the documents and started reading. Her face changed. Brad, is this true? You have that much debt? Ashley, I can explain. And he's getting kickbacks from construction suppliers, I continued, and not declaring that income. The IRS has already started an audit. What? Ashley stared at Brad. You told me everything was clean. It is clean.
Christina, you have no right. I have every right. I'm still your wife, and I have the right to know what debts my husband is racking up. I turned to Ashley. Sweetie, did you know the house he promised you was bought mostly with my money, and that the bank could seize it because of his debts? That's not true, Brad shouted, but there was panic in his voice. Oh, and one more thing. I pulled out another document. Yesterday, I froze our joint account and transferred all the money to my personal one. Know why? Because I have signing authority, and the bank has to protect funds from fraud. Ashley stepped back from Brad. Brad, what's she saying? Is this true? Ashley, listen to me. No, she waved him off. You lied to me. You said you had a stable job, a good salary, that the house was all yours. The house is mine? The house is in your mother's name, I said. But that doesn't mean it's yours. It means you tried to hide joint property. Ashley sat on the couch, covering her face with her hands. God, what have I gotten myself into? Ashley, don't listen to her. Brad approached her. We'll figure it out. We'll find a way. What way? She looked up. You owe $63,000. You've got IRS problems, and now your wife's suing you. Suing? Brad spun toward me. Suing where? Police. Fraud report. Court. Lawsuit to invalidate the transactions, and your IRS audit has already started. You can't do this. We're husband and wife. Were. Now I'm just protecting my interests, like you taught me this morning. Ashley stood and headed for the door. I'm leaving. I need to think. Ashley, wait. Brad ran after her. No, leave me alone. I don't want to deal with your mess. She stormed out, slamming the door. Brad stood in the middle of the living room, confused and angry. Satisfied? He asked. Quite. You ruined my relationship. I opened that girl's eyes to the truth. She had a right to know who she's dealing with. Christina, you've gone too far. Withdraw the lawsuits. No. Then I'll file for divorce and prove that That I what? That I earn money honestly? That I don't hide income? That I don't steal from my own husband? Brad clenched his fists. I didn't steal. I just what? Took what you thought was yours without my consent? That's stealing, Brad. We're husband and wife. Everything's joint. We're husband and wife. You said you're filing for divorce, so now the property gets divided by law. By law? He smirked. Fine. By law it is. But I won't give you the house. That's not up to you. The court will decide. And if I don't want a divorce? Too late, Brad. Too late. He grabbed his suitcase and headed for the door. This isn't over, Christina. I'll find a way to take it all back. Good luck. When he left, I felt relief for the first time in a long time. Finally, the masks were off. Finally, we were speaking honestly. But I knew this was just the beginning. Brad wasn't one to give up easily. He'd try to find a way to take everything back. But I was ready. The next 3 days were tense. I worked, but my thoughts kept returning to the upcoming court case. Deborah called several times with updates. Good news, she said Thursday morning. The IRS found evidence your husband is hiding income. They're launching a full audit. What about the house? The court scheduled a preliminary hearing for Monday. I think we'll get an injunction on any property transactions until the case is resolved. Friday evening, I was working on a report at home when I heard noise in the yard. Looking out the window, I saw Brad approaching the house with his friend Roger, someone I never liked.
Roger was the type who always knew how to skirt the law. I opened the door before they could knock. "What do you want?" I asked. "To talk," Brad said. "Peacefully. I don't think we have anything to talk about." "We do. Let's go inside." I hesitated, but let them in. Roger looked around as if appraising the property. "Christina," Brad began, "let's settle this amicably. No courts, no lawyers." "Too late for that." "Not too late. I'm offering a fair split. 50-50. 50-50? I laughed. "What about your $63,000 in debts? 50-50 on those too?" "Those are my debts. I'll pay them." "With what? You've got a mortgage, loans, credit card debts. Where's the money coming from?" Roger cleared his throat. "Christina, I think you should take Brad's offer. Court battles can drag on for years." "And why are you here?" "I'm helping Brad sort things out. I have experience in these matters." "What kind of experience?" "I know how to avoid unnecessary problems." There was a hint of a threat in his voice. I realized the conversation was taking a bad turn. "Christina," Brad said, "you know if this goes to court, ugly details will come up. Maybe we should settle peacefully." "What ugly details?" "Like the fact that you transferred money from our joint account without my consent. That could be considered theft too." "I had signing authority, but not the right to empty the account." Roger leaned toward me. "Christina, you're a smart woman. Think about your reputation. A scandal could hurt your career." "Are you threatening me?" "We're just talking about possible consequences." I stood up. "That's it. Conversation over. Get out of my house." "Your house?" Brad smirked. "The house belongs to my mother. For now. Not for long." "Christina, last chance. Agree to a peaceful settlement?" "No." "Then don't be surprised by the consequences." They left, but I knew Brad wasn't giving up. He'd fight to the end, probably not by the cleanest methods. I called Deborah and told her about the visit. "They were trying to intimidate you," she said. "That's a good sign. It means they know their case is weak." "What about their threat that I transferred the money?" "Nonsense. You had signing authority. You acted within the law." Saturday morning, my phone woke me. It was my mom. "Christina, what's going on? Brad's mother just called me." "Mom, we're getting divorced." "Divorced? Why didn't you tell me?" I sighed. Mom never approved of my choice. She thought I was too focused on my career and neglected family. "Because I knew you'd say it's my fault." "Christina, marriages don't just fall apart. What happened?" "He's cheating on me. Has been for 4 months. And he transferred our property to his mother." "What?" Mom was shocked. "He can't do that." "Apparently he can. He has my power of attorney." "What power of attorney?" I told Mom the whole story. She listened silently, occasionally gasping. "That scoundrel," she said finally. "Christina, I always thought there was something off about him." "Really?" "Yes. He was always too slippery. I tried to hint at it, but you defended him." "I loved him." "Loved? And now?" "Now, I want justice." "Good. Fight, daughter. Don't let him deceive you." Mom's support meant a lot to me. I felt I wasn't alone in this battle. Monday morning, I was in court. Deborah met me at the entrance. "Ready?" she asked. More than ready. Brad showed up with his lawyer, a scrawny man in an ill-fitting suit. He avoided my gaze, but I could see he was nervous. The judge, an older woman with a stern face, listened to both sides. Deborah presented all the evidence. Documents showing I contributed most of the funds for the house, bank statements reflecting our incomes, and the private investigator's report on Brad's infidelity. Brad's lawyer argued that the power of attorney was legal, and he had the right to manage the property. "Your Honor," Deborah said, "using a power of attorney to deprive a spouse of property right before a divorce is fraud, especially when done secretly with intent to cause harm." "Objection sustained," the judge said. "I'm placing a hold on the disputed property until the case is resolved." Brad paled. His lawyer whispered something to him, but it was clear things weren't going their way. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm referring the case materials to the prosecutor's office to consider opening a criminal case for fraud." After the hearing, Brad approached me. "Christina, do you realize what you're doing? You could put me in jail." "You should have thought of that earlier." "I thought we were civilized people." "Civilized people don't steal from their own wives." "Fine, you won this round. But the game's not over. For me, it is. The court will decide now." The next day, Deborah called with good news. "The IRS finished their audit. Your husband owes $47,000 in back taxes plus penalties. Total, about $80,000. "That's great. And one more thing. The prosecutor's office opened a criminal case for fraud." I felt justice was prevailing, but I didn't expect Brad to try one last blow. Wednesday evening, I was working at home when I heard noise in the yard. Looking out, I saw Brad's pickup and another car. 2 unfamiliar men got out. I knew this was bad. Grabbing my phone, I locked myself in the bedroom and called the police. "There are uninvited guests in my yard," I told the dispatcher. "My husband and 2 men. I'm afraid for my safety." "A patrol car will be there in 5 minutes." I heard them trying to open the door, then the sound of breaking glass. "Christina!" Brad yelled. "Come out! We just want to talk!" But I wasn't coming out. I sat in the bedroom, clutching my phone, waiting for the police. Finally, I heard sirens. The noise in the yard stopped. A few minutes later, there was a knock. "Police! Open the door!" I went downstairs and opened it. Officer Davis, whom I knew from previous neighborhood calls, stood there. "Mrs. Taylor, are you okay?" "Yes. Thank you for coming so quickly." "We detained your husband and his friends. Were they trying to break in?" "Yes. They broke the kitchen window." "That's unlawful entry. We can press charges." "Please do." The next day, Deborah told me Brad had been charged with unlawful entry on top of the fraud charge. "He's completely sunk his chances," she said. "The court will definitely side with us now." The property division hearing took place a month later. A lot had changed in that time. Ashley had broken things off with Brad for good when she learned about his legal troubles. She even testified in court that Brad had told her about his plans to screw over his wife. The IRS billed Brad $80,000. The prosecutor's office sought a 1-year suspended sentence for fraud. And most importantly, it turned out Brad owed even more money than I thought, $120,000 in total. In court, Deborah brilliantly presented our case. She proved the house was bought mostly with my money, that Brad hid income, and that he had massive debts he tried to foist on me. "Your Honor," she said in her closing statement, "the defendant didn't just try to deprive the plaintiff of property, he tried to saddle her with his debts while hiding his true income." The judge listened to both sides and delivered the ruling. Given that the majority of funds for the disputed property were contributed by the plaintiff, given the defendant's attempt to illegally deprive the plaintiff of this property, given the defendant's concealment of income and significant debts, the court rules The transactions transferring the house and car are declared invalid. The house is awarded to the plaintiff. The car is awarded to the plaintiff. The defendant is ordered to pay the plaintiff $50,000 in compensation for emotional distress. The defendant is responsible for all court costs. It took a moment to sink in that I'd won. Not just won. I got everything. The house, the car, and compensation. Brad sat pale, his lawyer whispering to him. I could see he was broken. After the hearing, I approached him. "Brad, I'm sorry it came to this." "Sorry?" He looked at me with bitterness. "You ruined my life." "I didn't ruin your life. You did. I lost everything. My job, my house, Ashley, and now these debts. You lost everything when you decided to betray me." "Christina, I didn't want it to turn out like this." "You did. You planned it carefully. You just didn't account for the fact that I can plan too." I turned and walked toward the exit. Deborah caught up with me. "Congratulations. You won on all counts." "Yes, but somehow I don't feel joy." "That's normal. Divorce is always a loss, even when you're right." A month later, I received the divorce papers. The house and car were officially mine. Brad was supposed to pay me $50,000 in compensation, but he had no money. I sold the house. Too many painful memories were tied to it. I bought a small apartment in Manhattan's Upper East Side with a view of Central Park. It wasn't just a home. It was my new start, a symbol of freedom and independence. The apartment was smaller than our old house, but cozy, with large windows and a bright interior I decorated to my taste. For the first time in years, I felt I was living for myself. Brad never paid the $50,000. His financial situation was disastrous. The IRS froze his accounts, and he had to sell his pickup to cover part of his debts. The prosecutor's office agreed to a suspended sentence for fraud, provided he paid the fines and back taxes. His career in construction ended. After the bribery scandal, he was fired, and word spread quickly in the industry. Ashley, I later learned, moved to another state. She sent me an apology letter admitting she didn't know the full truth about Brad. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because I wanted to leave that chapter of my life behind. My career, despite Roger's threats, only soared. After the divorce, I was promoted to vice president of corporate finance at Goldman Sachs. My reputation remained impeccable, and this battle made me even stronger. Colleagues joked that I could teach a master class in crisis management. Mom started visiting me in New York more often. We spent evenings over wine, talking about life, love, and the importance of trusting your instincts. She was proud of me, and that warmed my heart. 6 months after the divorce, I was sitting in my new apartment, looking at the city lights. My phone buzzed. A message from Brad. "Christina, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I looked at the screen, smiled, and deleted the message. Forgiveness is one thing, but going back to the past wasn't an option. I'd learned to value myself, my strength, and my future. Brad was part of my story, but not its ending. Now, I was building a new life, one where no one could steal my home or my heart. And that was my true victory. Did you like the story? Write your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next interesting story. See you tomorrow.